Hello and good morning and welcome to our webinar, Your Cybersecurity Toolkit. We want to introduce you today to smart ways to stay safe personally and also to protect your company online. My name is Leah Toms. I'm the EMEA Marketing Manager at GlobalSign. The webinar will be presented by James Coleman, our EMEA Sales Manager. He's been in the industry for lots and lots of years, so he knows a thing or two about cybersecurity and is the best man today. GlobalSign is the leading provider of trusted identity and security solutions. That sounds very technical, but yeah, the reason why we are doing this webinar is we've been active in the cybersecurity industry for many years. And we manage and issue millions of digital identities. They are a kind of digital passport, if you will, and we automate authentication and encryption. We're based in the Maidstone office, so a truly Kent businesses, but we have offices globally as well. So what will we talk about today? We've divided our topics into two. One is what can you personally do to protect yourself? And one is what can a company do to protect data? So for yourself, you can the steps you can take will go into smart passwords, how to spot phishing emails, how to check for secure websites, and then also the dangers of social engineering. What a company can do, there's several ways, but we'll touch on three of them. One is multi-factor authentication, one is secure emails, one is digital document signing, and then as an extra topic, we'll go into remote working. As you all know, a very current topic at the moment. So we'll have a little roundup of that as well. But with that, I'll hand you over to James, who has all the details.
Brilliant, thanks, Leah. Yeah, as Leah said, my name is James Coleman. I'm the EMEA Sales Manager for GlobalSign, and I've been with GlobalSign for over 10 years now. So I think the first thing that we're going to look at here is smart passwords. We have a look at the most common passwords, and believe it or not, these are still the most current passwords today. We can see the most common passwords there. If you have an opportunist hacker, these are the passwords that they'll use first off to try and gain access to the accounts. But using smart passwords is going to help your accounts not get hacked. So we've got some best practices to work through here. We say never reuse passwords for different platforms, and that's quite simply because if a hacker comes in and he gains your password for one of your accounts, he'll then try that in the most common places, Amazon, you know, all these places that people tend to shop online these days. If you have the same password, it's quite easy for somebody to be able to gain access to various different accounts of yours. So best practice for your passwords, we shouldn't use passwords from a dictionary. We shouldn't use important dates, birthdays, anniversaries, and it's also best practice not to use children's or pet names. And the reasons for this is that there are a number of password hacking tools out there at the moment, and what these tools do is they will search through dictionary lists, they search through social media, and they'll try and gain what your password could be. If you do use a number of different passwords out there, I mean, at the end of the day, we're humans, we forget a lot of things at the moment. It is hard to remember, and it is quite easy for us to say, well, I'll just put it on a Word document on my laptop, on my desktop. Or I'll just write it down, I'll put a post-it note in my drawer, I'll have a piece of paper in my drawer with all my passwords on. Best practice really is to use a password manager for this. Password managers, there's a number of them out there and they're very secure, and you're able to use those to be able to keep all your passwords safe. Now, it's recommended to use a 12-character password with a mix of special characters, upper, lowercase, and numbers. Now, the reason for this is that it will only take 3 hours to hack a password that's 8 letters with upper and lowercase, and it actually only takes 10 days for an 8-character password with upper and lowercase with numbers. So we recommend 12 characters, special characters, upper and lowercase with numbers, and the data coming back is it will take around 10 years to hack a password of those details. But obviously, if you have a number of these different passwords, the more complex they are, the more difficult they are to remember, hence recommending to use a password manager to be able to keep all those safe and to keep your accounts safe as well. So we're going to move on to phishing emails. I think it's something that we've all seen. We receive phishing emails. I mean, I receive a lot into my personal email address, quite a lot. So it is good to be able to identify what is a phishing email, how do we look for those. The example that we've got on the screen here is actually quite a good example of a phishing email. There's a number of different things that we need to check. I mean, the first thing that I would check on here is the email address. Is that an email address that my company uses? It looks pretty like a GlobalSign email address. So what other things can I look at in here to be able to verify if this is actually a phishing email or if it's a bona fide email from my company? Phishing emails will generally have links in there. And if it's a hyperlink, all we need to do is hover your cursor over the hyperlink as it's seen in the example there, and we actually look at the address where it's going to. So if we look at that URL there, we can look at that and say, actually, that's not a GlobalSign email address. And we can see that because the actual domain there is virus-control.com. But where they've put GlobalSign UK within that as a subdomain, it could look like a bona fide address. So we should always verify these links before we click on them. So we have an example here, a bit of a less sophisticated phishing email. And we look and we say, well, you know, the first things that we're going to do is we're going to check the address. Is that address something that we recognize? We can always use a search engine to look for that domain to see if that's the correct domain. But there's other things in here that we're going to look at. So we've looked at the address as before. We've looked at the hyperlink. Do they make sense to you? Are they something that you recognize? But if we look into this a little bit more, and we can see there that we've got some words that are circled and they're not spelled correctly. A lot of phishing emails will have incorrect spelling within them. So there's a number of different things we can do here to look at those. So this is a different type of phishing email now. We do all the checks that we've done in the previous two. So we look at the email address, we look at the links, we check for spelling mistakes. But what we can see here is that there's a lot of urgency being put into this email. It's you have to do something within the next 48 hours. Now, hackers will always set things up and look to take them down very, very quickly. So it's kind of a, let's see how many people we can get in a short space of time. So always be suspicious of emails that, or even messages that want you to do something very, very quickly. It's something that they try and get into our heads so that we don't think straight about what we're doing. But also remember that hackers don't just use emails. These now come through SMS, WhatsApp, and other messaging service that we've got, even through Skype nowadays, they can come through. So always check different things on there. But if you're ever in any doubt, speak to your IT team and have a look to see where it's come from. So we're going to move on to secure websites. Now, there's 4 scenarios here that we can fall for a suspicious site. If we open a phishing email and we click on a link that takes us to a website that looks the same, but potentially is a fake website. If we click on suspicious ads such as pop-ups, accessing fake login pages, again, these are sometimes sent through from, I think we've all got those emails from our banks that tell us there's been suspicious activity and they ask us to log in. Clicking on the link, it will take you to a page that does look like the page that it's trying to take you to. They will emulate that very, very well. And also engaging in social media can trick us as well. So we always say that before clicking on any link at all, just check that the URL is correct. A fake website, will still contain the company name, as we've seen in the previous example with the globalsign.uk.virus-control.com. We see that they put that name in there to try and dupe you into clicking on it and thinking it's the same. You also find that there might be spelling mistakes within that URL as well. But you can identify the source of the link. You can go via Google to see what the actual link could be. After clicking a page, if you click on a link and it takes you to a page, again, there's things that we can look at on the website to make sure that it's the right place, the place that we want to be going to. So we always scan the page and look for a trusted seal on that page. We also check the address bar for organizational details within an SSL certificate. If there's no SSL certificate there, the browsers will now show you, as we see in that example there, will show you not secure. That tells you that there's not an SSL certificate on the page. The SSL certificate is there for authentication as well as encrypting your data going across the net. So we can, if there is an SSL certificate on there, we can still always check the details within that SSL certificate simply by pushing F12, and that will take you to, that will have a pop-up on the right-hand side of the screen, and you click View Certificate, and you can then have a look within that certificate to make sure that it's the place that you're going to. And I think the rule is, if you're in any doubt at all, don't click it. Always go to Google and do a search for the company, and if it's some way that you want to go to, you can go through that way rather than clicking the link in a potentially suspicious email. And always call the company to make sure to check if it's something that's coming from them. Companies now know that there's so many phishing emails being sent out there, banks, shops, that they will be able to tell you straight off if it's actually come from them or not, or if it's something that you need to ignore. So there are a number of social engineering things that we could fall for out there. And I'm sure some of these you would have heard of. Some of the words, some of the names of them you might not have heard of, but I think a lot of these are going to be familiar to us. Baiting is something that has become more and more over the past probably 2 to 3 years. And it is simply where somebody will leave a device, whether it be a USB stick, a hard drive, and they'll leave that in a public place. Now, our human instinct when we see something is to pick it up, and our inquisitive nature tells us to see what's on it, which is why this is quite an effective form of attack. So let's a USB stick. Someone could leave a USB stick on a park bench, at a bus stop, on a train, just on the floor where there's plenty of footfall for somebody to pick up, in the hope that they will plug that into their laptop, just to be nosy and see what's on it, really. And obviously then your laptop can be infected and your personal data stolen. Phishing, which is something that we've just discussed, and it is where an attacker will pretend to be somebody that you know, somebody that you trust, a legitimate source, and encourages you to click or give over your information. Now, pretexting is where an attacker will create a fabricated scenario that they'll use to steal information. So it could be somebody posing as a colleague of yours. It could be somebody posing as a department within your company, and they'll ask you to confirm some information. And they could very well really need this information quickly, and get you to provide that information for them. Quid pro quo is something that we've all heard of. I'm pretty sure we've all seen it in the news. And it is where an attacker will request information in return for compensation. So it could be an email that you receive advising you that you're a beneficiary of a large amount of money, but to be able to get that money, they'll have a list of questions that you need to answer at the bottom: your name, your address, your place of work, your date of birth, even your mother's maiden name will be on there, so that they can try and steal your identity. Spear phishing is probably the most successful form of acquiring confidential information, and it accounts for 91% of attacks. Now, it's similar to phishing, like the phishing emails we saw earlier, but it will contain more personal information. So rather than dear customer, it will say dear James. So it will be more of an attack specific to me. And that is where people will fall for it because it looks more real, because they're using your name, they're using your personal information to gain your more information from you, to be able to steal your identity, to be able to get you to pass over different information. Now, tailgating is more of a physical threat than everything else. Now, tailgating is where someone will follow you into a usually secure location. So it could be your office. It's more difficult to manage if you are in a communal building. If you have more than one company in a building, generally you'll have a keypad on the door to access the building. And it could be quite easily someone coming up behind you and, excuse me, mate, hold the door for me. And again, that plays on our human instincts of being kind. And of course, I'll hold the door open for you. But if you don't recognize these people, you're well within your rights to ask them questions. Why are you here? Who are you? Who do you work for? Simple things that potentially would put somebody off. Tailgating, somebody will hope that they'll play on your human instincts of kindness and you'll just let them in the building. So if you challenge them, they'll tend to turn around and walk away. Now, what we're seeing more in this day and age is that technology is smart, very, very smart, and to a certain point will assist us in stopping some of these attacks. But as I'm sure you can see in all of these attacks, there's one weak link, and that's us as humans. So the point that we're trying to get across is don't be the weakest link in here. If you follow these guidelines and you have a look to see what we're doing and have a look at best practice on how to deal with them, you can stop yourself being the weakest link in there. So we're going to now move on to more what a company can do to protect staff, to protect data, to protect their own networks. And it's something that at GlobalSign we specialize in. So one of the first things that was taught to me when I joined GlobalSign was multi-factor authentication. So there's 3 factors of authentication that we can use to gain access to networks, resources, even our laptops. So the 3 factors are something that you know, something that you have, and something that you are. So something that you know is quite simply, you can have your password. I know my password, that's something that I know. But is that enough to stop other people being able to access the systems? So this is where we can enter in multi-factor. So we can enter 2-factor, 3-factor authentication. So if we enter something that you have, which could be a token, smart card, even mobile phones nowadays, I know that there are systems to log into and it will ring your mobile phone to be able to get it. So you're entering your password and then you confirm that by either using a token, using a smart card, or using your mobile phone. So all of a sudden, 2-factor authentication is going to be a lot more secure than just using a password. And the 3rd factor, something that you are, would be the biometrics. So retina scanner, fingerprints. I know some laptops nowadays as standard come with a fingerprint scanner. Makes it a lot more secure. So these multi-factor authentications can be used to access a number of things, such as domain controller, machine certificates, mobile devices. It's used for smart card login, cloud services, USB tokens, VPNs, gateways, and Wi-Fi networks. So using multi-factor authentication allows you to let the right people and devices into your network, and it keeps the wrong ones away. Another way we can help protect ourselves, but not only protect ourselves, protect our customers as well. Secure emails have been around for a long, long time. It's something that's used widely across Europe and certainly in the States, but it's something that hasn't taken hold massively in the UK. Now, when we digitally sign our emails, we do that not only to counter phishing and the loss of data, but also digital certificate authenticates the sender's identity. And it is pretty clear to the recipient that that is from that person. I think everybody who receives emails from us at GlobalSign, they expect to see a rosette on the email which confirms I am James Coleman and I work for GlobalSign. It's clickable, so you can click on it and you can see that it is me, that I've been authenticated by a certification authority such as GlobalSign. As well as authentication, you can also use digital certificates on an email to encrypt emails. Now, similar to an SSL certificate, it doesn't stop a man-in-the-middle attack, but if somebody were to gain that email, then the whole body of text is encrypted and they won't be able to read it, and obviously won't be able to make changes to the contents either. So your customers know that that's coming from you, but also it protects you so that you can send encrypted emails and people know who you are. We're going to move on to digital document signing. And I think it's probably prudent to say at this point that digitally signing a document isn't putting a copy of your wet signature onto the document, but it's an authenticated digital certificate that's added to a document. So digital signatures are legally admissible. It saves time and it saves money against a wet signature. You don't need to print, sign, scan, and then email back to the recipient. It actually has higher assurance over an easily forged wet signatures. The digital signatures are time-stamped, and they're time-stamped from a third-party time-stamping service. So they do actually stand up in a court of law to say that this document was signed by this person at this day at this time. The signatures are compliant with industry and regulatory rules, such as e-invoicing, which is something that came out, I think, last year. You can digitally sign your e-invoices if they're going out through Europe, and they are compatible with Microsoft Office, Adobe, Libra, and Bluebeam. Now, digital signatures can be integrated for high volume signings. So for instance, if your company wants to send out their invoices and they want to digitally sign these invoices, then it can be done through the cloud from high volumes. If the company doesn't want to use a cloud service, they can use an on-premise HSM. By HSM, we mean a hardware security module, and this will be used to store the digital certificate. And this can be done in a number of ways. It can be done as and when you create a document, or it can be done in batches. So for instance, as I say, invoices, if you want to send all those out at the end of the month, you can create all of your PDFs, and then you can use your integration with your HSM to be able to push all of the invoices through there to be digitally signed. We do have integrations with platforms, Adobe Sign, DocuSign, but it's also worth noting that it's not just high volume that digital signatures cater for. There are solutions available for single users. Obviously, using an HSM for a single user is a little bit overkill. If you're only doing a few, maybe you're doing a few signings a week, then you can store the certificate on a FIPS compliant USB token, and you can use this to sign the documents. So there is a solution out there. what you'll actually see on the document, regardless of which solution you use, what you'll see is you'll see a blue bar, excuse me, at the top of the PDF, and that will show who it's been signed by, when it's been signed. And if I was to send that document to somebody and somebody is able to grab that and make changes to it, the digital signature will advise you of that. So we're going to look at remote working, and I think, yes, due to COVID-19, I think probably most people on this call are going to be sitting in their home office. But even before COVID-19, we increasingly see people working from home. With the technology out there, it makes it very easy for us. I think we would have all seen that now with all of us working from home, that we can see that the technology's there, that I can keep in touch with my guys, whether in the UK or across Europe, without a problem. But remote working comes with its own potential issues. And it's issues that potentially we don't think about, like people using their own devices for their work. They are less protected than if it was a business. Home networks aren't as protected, so attacks are easier to facilitate. If you're sitting at home on your own and your phone rings and you pick it up, where you haven't got people around you, a fake call could seem more legit. And exactly the same with emails. You know, if we go back to looking at the example that creates urgency within an email, so you could potentially have an email from a colleague, a manager, a director. You know, with LinkedIn these days, it's quite easy to be able to get people's managers and directors. And if there's an urgent email comes through, where we're in the office and we can turn to the person next to us and ask for advice, you know, what do you think of this? Or even pop to the next office and have a chat with the person that supposedly sent it to you. You might be more inclined to take on the actions within that email. So what we try and say is use your knowledge, use authentication, use digital signing, and using the best practice that we try to advise people of. It helps to fight cybercrime, especially in this day and age. There's so much of it out there, and when we're at home and we're isolated, it can be a lot easier to fall for these. Within our website, there's a number of blogs that we put out there. There's a number of white papers. There's a number of educational information that we try to put out there for people. And this is available to anybody and everybody who wants to be able to know it. You know, this isn't within an account within GlobalSign. You can just go to the website and you can have a look through here. Obviously, we're available if anybody wants to talk to us about anything, about securing their company, different things that they want to do. As you can see, our telephone number's on there. We're based in Maidstone in Kent. So if you've got any issues that you want to talk through, give us a call on there. All of our guys are able to pick up the phones. So yeah, so we're here if you need us.
Thank you, James. Obviously, that half an hour is very short to give you a detailed breakdown on anything into, but yeah, have a look at our blog. There's so much material on there if you want to learn more. Thank you so much for your time today, and we'll send out that presentation recording to you afterwards, so you can look back if that is of interest. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Leah, and thank you everyone for joining. Have a great day.